Hi, welcome. Welcome back to another Onkruid video. Welcome back to the second to last episode in this series about the book Away from Worrying, or Weg van het piekeren, Action as a Remedy to Worrying by Filip Raes. Belgian, Leuven-based clinical psychologist, teacher at the University of the KU Leuven, expert when it comes to rumination, worrying, piekeren, whatever you want to call it. I normally show the book again during my introduction. I'm like, yeah, this book right here, but you can see that my hand is a little empty. That's because one of my colleagues at work already wanted to borrow the book. So that means that my psychoeducation about it at work that I gave kind of left a little impact, hopefully. Chapter 4, title People Change, or Mensen veranderen. Chapter starts off with a bit of an odd introduction, but I think a vital one, a very important one. And the basic premise of the introduction of this fourth chapter is, I think, like, do what you already know to be good for you. We have talked so much about which specific actions to pick after you notice that you are worrying. Worrying, huh? Action time. You know that you need to pick something that is in line with your values, or you either need to do exactly what you're worrying about if you have control over it. That's all fine. That's all very specific advice for what to do in cases of worrying. But in general, your general behavior, your everyday run-the-mill behavior, what you do on a day-to-day basis, regardless of whether you are worrying or not, is so important as well. Move, eat healthy stuff, sleep well, go outside, be together, and especially being together is of such vital importance that specific psychotherapeutic schools or psychotherapeutic way of thoughts and a lot of therapies, a lot of protocols and stuff like that all already focus on that again. And it sounds so simple, right? It's kind of the same as a psychologist telling you, hey, just go for a walk, you'll feel better. But in essence, that is such an important part of any kind of treatment. And especially in times of crisis, in times of chaos, for example, the COVID pandemic, it's so important to remain on your regular scheduled programming as far as that's possible, if you're not like obliged to stay inside, or otherwise you will get violently beaten by a rogue police force. Either way, I digress. Going outside, still going for those walks, especially in those periods of crisis. This is the most important thing you can do to keep your mind sane and keep your body healthy, which, if you've been following along this series for a while, is kind of the same thing. An additional bonus here is that those types of periods, like for example the COVID pandemic, can in some way, shape or form bond us stronger together even. So it can strengthen the feeling of connectivity that we want to achieve by doing things together with other people, and that we as therapists advise our clients to do. And not only physical movement, right? But as I said, also eating healthy. The role of eating and what food we put into our digestive systems, and that relation, or the relation of that food intake to things like anxiety disorders, depressive disorders, other types of psychopathology and mental health in general, is more and more understood and also more and more researched. I know, for example, that in Health Psychology 2 at the University of Leuven, we had an entire class about the gastrointestinal system and its influence on mental health. How bacteria inside your small intestine can actually in some way, shape or form play a part in depressive disorders. Very interesting stuff that will be more and more researched in the future, without a doubt. First subheader of this chapter, together, outside, movement. Samen buiten bewegen. Movement is crucial. We can't state it enough. Staying alive through movement is so important. It can prevent a whole bunch of illness on the mental and physical side, and it can also have a healing function, especially also in anxiety and depressive disorders. Like, scientific research has really proven this, that moving, small acts of movement even, going for a walk, going for a run, going for a bicycle ride, doing anything at all, but just letting the blood flow throughout your body can be of crucial importance to the treatment of those disorders. Scientific research points out that if all of us would just move a little bit more, up to 10% of all depressive disorders could be prevented. That's an amazing statistic, right? And special attention deserves to be put aside for dancing. Dancing is such a beautiful way of introducing this movement into your life. If you're more interested into that side of psychology, you can look at Peter Lovat's work. And if you've been following along this series and you hear that movement can have an important impact on anxiety disorders and depressive disorders, we know that worrying is a core symptom in both of those disorders. And that's why movement and physical activity can diminish worrying by a lot. It can lessen the intensity. It can make the worrying last a bit shorter. It can't completely prevent the worrying, of course, because as we know, once a worrier, always a worrier, but it can make you worry differently. And another interesting interaction between worrying and physical movement is that while you are running, for example, and you start worrying, you'll notice that you run slower, that you walk slower, that you're also paying less attention to the surroundings, so that type of movement will be less beneficial for you then. Worrying really sucks away your energy you would otherwise use to tense your muscles, relax them a little bit again, in short, to practice physical activity. If you are like me and like the author of this book and you're a runner and you use the running sometimes to put the worrying on hold for a second, not to get rid of the worrying or to control the worrying, but from a perspective of accepting that the worrying is there and that we are still going for our run, still acting according to our values, vary your routes. Don't always run the same path, because always run the same path will make it so that less things in your surroundings can take your attention away from the worrying. Worrying also plays an important role in chronic pain. People that have chronic back pain, for example, start worrying about, will I ever be able to walk comfortably again? Will I ever be able to care for myself anymore? And exposure therapy here is countering that worrying, is countering the avoidance by making them move. Making sure that they move and that they realize that, hey, I can still do this, nothing went wrong. And that's the important learning experience. Anxiety disorders, depressive disorders, chronic pain, nameless implications of why movement is important in the story of worrying. And sure, movement is important, but what's also important, and maybe even more important, is being together. Connectedness, social feelings. People need people. People that do not experience a fulfilling feeling of connectedness to others have 50% higher chance to die in the next 7 years. Let me repeat that one more time. People that don't feel connected to other people have a 50% higher chance to die in the next 7 years. If that doesn't blow your mind, then I think nothing will. The impact of social connectedness, doing things with others, feeling connected to others, feeling embedded in a social network, in a system, is as large as quitting tobacco, quitting alcohol, and even larger than dealing with your obesity. Being together. Even better is moving together, and then if you want to hit 3 birds with 1 stone, not how the saying goes, but it is how the saying goes right now, move together outside. And when you're being together with someone, or you're doing things together with someone, you're for example going for a run with someone or walking with someone, quality is way more important than quantity. Make sure that you do your movement with a person that you really enjoy being around, and not just in like a large group where you don't feel connected to the other people. Never underestimate the importance of sunlight. So important for our sleep rhythms, for our immune system, for vitamin D, and even for serotonin. It's vital that you go outside, enjoy those rays of that giant light ball up there for a second. Even though it takes them 8 minutes to travel to the earth, once they're here, please bask in them. Bask in the glory of that giant helium ball. For my Dutch enjoyers of fine culture, zo'n grote vuurbal, jongen. Scientific research actually has proven that being outside is fine, but being outside in predominantly blue or green environments has benefits for our mental health. Specifically in Belgium, for example, there was research into worrying. We know that worrying increased in the general population once COVID hit. We all started to worry a bit more during the pandemic. But it was also proven that people living at the coast, so in a blue environment, had less of an impact from the COVID pandemic. They still worried a bit more, but the increase was less than in the rest of the country. And a final remark in this subheader is related to situations that contribute to us experiencing a feeling of awe, a feeling of amazement. If you experience one of those feelings, you're for example looking at a giant nature landscape, or at a very small thing, at just like a small little mushroom, for example, sprouting out, just all those little things that can give you that feeling of awe, feeling of I'm part of something bigger, nature is beautiful, that kind of shuts down the thinking part of your brain for a while. And worrying is a very cognitive, verbal behavior, so it gets blocked off for a second. You stop worrying for a while, and you can enjoy the vast expanse in front of you, for example, or just enjoy the thing that made that awe feeling arise, that awesome thing. Even looking at such images online can have such an effect, and that's why most of the time my desktop background is of like a very beautiful nature landscape, or those are some of the movie scenes I enjoy the most, for example. We recently went to watch Avatar 2, The Way of the Water, and a very blue environment with some very cinematic scenes that can inspire awe in you for sure. Subheader 2, relax, take it easy. Don't need to translate that into Dutch. Mika fans know what I'm talking about. Action as a remedy, the subtitle rather of this book, doesn't entail that your entire life has to be one rat race now. It doesn't entail that you can't ever rest, that you always have to be in action. And relaxing actions can be equally as important and equally as helpful towards worrying, as long as they are worthy, as long as they are in line with your values, and as long as they are not from a point of avoidance. It's not about the specific concrete action, we have to look at the function. And it's very important in psychotherapy as well. You always have to look at the function of behavior. It might be very crazy that a person is addicted to alcohol in your mind because you're like, you know about all the negative health benefits, you know that it's destroying your liver and your body, you're experiencing Korsakoff symptoms, you're literally losing your mind. Why would you still do it? But for them, it has an avoidance function, and you need to understand that. Make sure that regardless of whether you are a worrier or not, this is really the takeaway you need to have from this specific video, if you ask me, that your life has a balance between things that take away energy and things that give energy. Don't wait with relaxing until your entire to-do list has been shrinked down to only 1 or 2 points. No. Work in batches. Make sure that you relax and take breaks. It's absolutely important. Make sure that there is a strategic switching between hard work and hard relaxation. And then the final subheader of this chapter, and one of the final subheaders of this entire series and of the book, is mindfulness. A hype lately. A hype in the 21st century, that's for sure. But what is it exactly about? Do you need to meditate? Do you need to look for silence? And is this the way mindfulness needs to be practiced by everyone? No, not at all. Mindfulness is about living a certain way. It's about being aware in situations and being in your life in an aware state, noticing a lot of things and not just racing through life. Standing still for a second, listening, watching, experiencing awe. That's what mindfulness is all about. It could be in large things, like for example on a trip to the Alps, make sure that you look around, that you experience everything to the fullest throughout your senses. It could be in the smallest things. When you're making a cup of tea at home, for example, really look at the way all the colors and all the particles are dissolving throughout your water when you're dumping that little sacket of tea, that little pocket of tea in there. Observing everything in your life, both externally like the tea, but internally like when you're drinking it as well, with an open and mild attention, without evaluation, without attaching values to it, thinking something is nice or not nice, without judgment, just observing and experiencing everything in your life. You choose a focus and you pay attention to that focus. If your thoughts kind of scatter off a little bit, go into the distance, go over here, go over there, for example, very normal. Mindfulness is a skill. If your thoughts do that, they kind of flutter away like a little butterfly, for example, tell yourself, okay, that's fine. I'm gonna go back to my focus and continue with the mindfulness. Practice mindfulness skills and don't practice controlling your mind, because that's not gonna work, as we know. Don't think about the white bear. Ha! Gotcha, didn't I, huh? Mindfulness-based stress reduction and mindfulness-based cognitive therapy are both effective in our battle against depression, our worldwide battle against depression. And these therapies also focus on mindfulness, as the name suggests, but one of the core focuses is also to diminish the impact of worrying. A very important concept in mindfulness and in those therapies is self-compassion. It is a crucial concept, and it's a concept that the author of this book, Filip Raes, really wants to make sure that we realize that we need to have self-compassion towards our worrying behaviors. Look at yourself from a soft and a mild perspective. Accept your mistakes. This mild self-compassion, this openness towards yourself and your mistakes should be a nice counter to the internal critic that is normally plaguing your mind. The internal critic that is telling you, wow, you can't even focus on this cup of tea and how the colors are dissolving in it, you really suck. No. Tell your mind, oh, thank you for notifying me of my thoughts wandering away, I'll go back to my focus. Mildness, self-compassion. Vital importance in life in general, and especially also when you're applying mindfulness to the treatment of worrying. Mindfulness is also in essence exposure, which we've already talked about a bunch in this series. You're not running away from thoughts, from experience, from sensations, from emotions. You're experiencing them in the here and now. And you have your full attention towards them. An open attention, a mild attention without judgment or without evaluation. Mindfulness and meditation do go hand in hand, but if meditation is not for you, don't do it. The author of this book tells us about how every morning, at the start of the morning, he sits on the edge of his bed and breathes for a while. Just breathes. He breathes to feel the feeling tone of everything around him, which is basically or not everything around him, really everything inside of him, the feeling tone of internal stimuli. How do things feel inside of him right now? Do they feel okay, not okay, neutral? It's alright. It's alright whatever the outcome is. It's alright to feel like shit sometimes, but being mindful and attentive toward it from a non-evaluative, non-judgmental, open, mild position, that's crucial. That's the key. And that's also the final remark for this episode. One more short episode to go, where we will quickly be going over some of the take-home messages of the book together, just like the author wants us to do, because the final chapter of his book is called Take Home, and it's a very short summary. And then we'll be done with it. We'll have read this entire book together, actually. I'll have summarized it for you in the hope that you can take some things away to practice in your own life or to give further on to your clients. Everything we have done in this book so far, everything we discussed, a core principle has always been mildness and openness and humor. Realize how excessively, exuberantly ridiculous some of your worrying behaviors and thoughts are, and laugh at them, laugh with them, from a non-self-critical point of view, but from a point of view filled with self-compassion. This entire journey towards getting rid of your worrying or worrying differently, going away from the worrying and installing action as a remedy, is a process that has to be filled with mildness towards yourself. Accepting that mistakes are going to happen and it's not always going to be easy, that relapse is possible, that not every exercise is for you, not everything is going to work, and that you're not going to go for that run every Sunday even when you told yourself you were going to do that. That mindfulness that has to remain as like an underlying stability throughout this entire journey is of the utmost importance. Thank you very much for watching. Hope to see you in the next one, the final one, a short one. Bye-bye.